Hello and welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm Nikhil Vaish, your host, founder, and CEO of Boost Solo. My next guest calls herself the costing chaos controller who traded in the corporate spreadsheet for entrepreneurial freedom to help manufacturers transform financial nightmares into peace of mind. Shalena, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Nikhil.
So I'm going to jump. I love to jump right in, I should say. So when we chatted, you mentioned that it was after being let go during a reorg that you sort of paused and reflected and thought about what you wanted to do next. Can you take us inside that moment and sort of talk about how it led you to solopreneurship?
Yeah, certainly. So I had been in the corporate world for over 15 years and kind of most of that time in the finance and accounting roles in various roles. And after when you live in that life, your life is revolving around the month end cycle and the fact that you have a lot of times a very short close schedule. So, I sat down, I've got 2 young kids at home and sat down and tried to figure out what my next steps really wanted to be because working that corporate schedule took me away from my kids a lot. And so I had a family friend that had gone off on her own and started her own accounting business about 15 years earlier. And I called her up and said, "Hey, I'm kind of thinking I maybe want to try to just do this on my own and help out the small business side." And she said, "What took you so long?" So at that point, we said, okay, if I talked to my husband and said, if I'm going to start my own business, now's the great time to do that while our kids are still relatively young and not, but allowing me to have that freedom still to be involved in their lives, but yet also just to kind of, because you get a severance when you're let go. So I had a little bit of severance, a little bit of cushion to kind of get started and see where it took me. So, just kind of, it's scary at first. It's scary on multiple levels. Anytime you get that kind of news, your first thought goes to, oh my gosh, how are we going to do? What am I going to do? But it's really a year and a half later, it's really been a blessing in disguise and it's been a great journey so far. I've learned lots and it's kept me really interested and able to help a lot of different companies and see a lot of different things that I hadn't really been exposed to up until this point.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot more about that journey, but it's always nice to get a little bit of a push, right? But even with that, I always say you still have to make the leap without the net, right? You still have to do
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah. And that's I don't know if I would have gone out on my own had I not been let go. I was already kind of starting to look at, was there something I could do to develop long-term, kind of on a, side hustle type situation, but really hadn't dug too deep into it. So it forced me into having to make a decision. And, so far it's working out well for us. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that seems to be a common thread in a lot of the stories. Now, the other thing you said to me, which is interesting, is in those early stages, you initially thought you wanted to be a bookkeeper and start a bookkeeping business, right? But then
Yes.
you sort of did some work, you realized that wasn't the right fit. So could you talk a little bit about how that period of sort of trial and error has informed your approach to finding the niche in manufacturing finance?
Yeah, certainly. So, really kind of when I started out with my own business, I had come across various training programs and bookkeeping and various, everybody does the Google of what kind of small business works or what kind of, what can I do? And, just kind of looked at it going, okay, bookkeeping is going to be probably the easiest way to get in. I've got the experience behind me, it's gonna give me, quick income necessarily using a little bit of my experience going in there. But so I enrolled in one of the training schools and I did complete that and got my QuickBooks Pro Advisor certification done. But then when I actually started reaching out trying to find clients, it kind of became obvious that worked for 15 plus years, not just in corporate American finance, but specifically in manufacturing businesses, and even more specifically, automotive aligned business or manufacturers. So, I kind of went, okay, there's not actually, that's the industry that I know and I know it well, but there's not a lot of people out here that work with manufacturers, or even inventory as to widen that net is, even inventory as a whole. A lot of the bookkeepers and that sort of thing want to do the service-based businesses, and they're a lot easier to track. There's not quite as much involvement in there. You don't need to know the business quite as well as you do with when you have inventory. And so I kind of went, okay, I'm not sure that the bookkeeping is necessarily going to keep me interested when if it's just going to be categorizing transactions and running reports and managing 30 to 40 clients a month. I'm not really sure that's kind of going to be a good fit for me. And, getting to know some people, making connections out on LinkedIn and other places, it became kind of clear that really embracing my history and going that top level more into the advisory side of things and into the controller CFO space, as opposed to the bookkeeper, it would bring down my clients, but it will actually increase my pay. And there's really not anybody that likes to work in those fields in the higher levels either. So it allowed me to use my experience that I've gained and not just throw that away for after 15 years, and actually use that to help out clients. Those are the people that there's really not a lot of support out there for those manufacturers.
Yeah, and you're sort of ahead of the curve with a lot of solopreneurs. And I'm going to come back and touch on that niching down again, because I think that's really interesting that you figured it out so early. But I want to go back and touch on something else for a minute before we come to that. So going from a corporate environment to sort of running your own business with two little kids at home is a pretty big leap, right? So what's been the biggest mindset shift you've had to make during the transition?
The biggest part probably has been I'm the master of my own time now,
Yeah.
as opposed to having a set schedule, which is a blessing and a curse, right? So it's great that I get to have that. So if my kids have an activity going on at school or daycare, I can just block it off my calendar and I'm going to go take care of it, and go enjoy that kind of thing. Whereas when I was in the corporate world, you had to ask for permission if it was time, specific projects going on. Month end, it was there were times that I just completely discounted being able to do anything, in those certain days. And, so the biggest thing has been, I now don't have to report to anybody. I report to myself, and I have to also manage my time and my mental capacity and my physical capacity by myself. Like, I'm responsible for that now. So, you know, part of it is realizing that if I don't get done what I'm going to do for a client and I said I was going to do something, that may mean that I'm jumping back on at 9 o'clock at night when my kids have gone to bed. But, it also means that, hey, if I am up at, the kids are out the door, we're up and going at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I jump on and I get it all done by, 10 or noon, I can be done for the day if I want to. And I can go, clean up around the house or just run errands or whatever stuff that I couldn't do during the day before. And so the biggest shift for me has really been trying to figure out how to prioritize and how to prioritize my time and how to balance my work and home life without somebody higher than me to giving me my marching orders, if you will, for what I need to do that day, or that week or that time. And even figuring out timelines for clients as far as how long is it going to take me to get XYZ done for them that they're looking for. So that's been the biggest challenge and the biggest change in the mindset of, hey, I don't have to report to anybody, but yet I still have to get the stuff done for the clients and get it done in a timely manner in the way that they, expect and are paying for that. So
Yeah, no. So it sounds like you're saying. So I get the blessing part, and the curse sounds like it's so the flip side is you've got so much time on your hands now. You've got to really compartmentalize and
yeah,
make sure you get all these different things done. Right, being a
very
parent.
much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. And it's something that I would say it's something that has reared its head over my life a few different times as I've shifted in, in different various portions of my life. making that mindset change and realizing how to spend your time when you're used to doing certain things in a certain way for a long period of time, that has come up again as a new way of having to think about things, and kind of realizing there's nobody to blame but myself anymore at this point. It's all on me to do and to succeed. So
Yeah,
yeah,
not work weekends now. I always blame having a bad boss.
right. That's me, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yes,
Yeah, no.
definitely.
And also, you raise an interesting point because one of the things I've had to do also is I really audit my time now. And in terms of like, what am I taking on? What's on my plate? And I actually sit down now and say, is this going to move my business forward or like
Hmm.
generate revenue? Or is it
Yeah,
just like admin work or is it busy work? Right. So I've become much
yeah,
better at sort of making those decisions.
yeah. And I think a lot of that comes with experience, and some of it too is um, just different clients for me right now. Anyways, different clients require different things from me, so they have different time, constraints, or even just the amount of workload for a client. Really kind of can differ from one client to the next, and so really kind of figuring out, is this something I can get done quickly, or is it something that is more labor intensive and it's going to take me longer to do? And besides that, do I have a time frame when I can sit down and actually dig into that client work? And a few things that I do, I really do need to have a block of time where I don't have distractions. And if it's going to be, 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm working on it and my kids are starting to come home, and, my husband's coming home from work and stuff, that's not a good time for working on my block. So any of that deep work needs to be done, certain times in the day. But just kind of trying to figure that piece out is definitely a challenge. And being part of different groups and stuff too, with people that are working in similar positions, helps kind of get a feel for that. But the time audit too is a really important kind of piece to really realize, what am I spending my time on? And in some cases, am I spending too much time on home stuff when I should be working on work stuff, when I have the time without the kids in type situation. So
Yeah. No, but you're right. It is a trial and error, and there isn't one.
yes.
There's no one size fits all because our lives are
No,
so, and our priorities are so different, and our client workload and is different. So I always say I went
absolutely.
through this, but you have to figure that out a little bit, but as you sort of journey down that road, I think. So you're right. So going back to your niching down now, I think that's a really interesting thing that you did in very early because the decision to niche down usually is well, most solopreneurs, I should say, grow broad. They get scared to sort of niche down, right? So how did you sort of confidence to narrow your focus to manufacturing? You touched on this a little bit. And also I'm interested in how did that decision impact your ability to attract your ideal clients?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting question, because, if you, a lot of times when you're starting a business, it really helps to find a mentor. I'm going to try to find somebody that has done what you want to do. Right. And a lot of I don't really like the word influencers, but a lot of the leaders, the thought leaders in the industry, right? They talk about the change that they made would have been niching down earlier. And if you can niche down earlier, do so, And I kind of always knew that manufacturing would be kind of where I would want to go because of my history with manufacturing. But part of it is just there's not a lot of people out there that in the finance field that work with those manufacturers. So the uh, competition is lower, if you will. Um, but there's also not a lot of people out there to help partner with in, so I'm not going to do it all myself in the accounting field, right? And even and as a controller in the CFO side, services side of things, I want to work with people that have a bookkeeper already in place, or a accounting staff on site already in place. And so sometimes it comes to a point of, they need, what's going to be best is that they need to move on from whoever they are currently with. And it's nice to be able to have people to be able to recommend to them, but there's not a lot of that out there either. So, part of that niching down was really kind of a necessity. And part of that is in the area that I live in, we have a high manufacturing presence. And so it made sense if I was going to try to work with local businesses at all to embrace that piece of things and really kind of say, you know what, why not? It makes your marketing message a lot easier when you're trying to market out and trying to get your business out there. And it also helps when you're making connections on things like LinkedIn and Facebook and other places to have that niche already established so that you can go into a conversation and you can look at this person and say, is that really going to help me? Or is it just a generic, person in there? And is that going to help grow my network the way that I want it to grow? So that decision actually really came easier than I would have expected just because that's what I knew. I mean, like that, that side of things is what I knew, but, it's a little scary because you're wondering if that means that you are telling people like who maybe would be interested in your services, nope, I'm not going to take you because you're focusing your marketing so much on that niche. But I've also realized that just because that's my niche doesn't mean I can't take clients outside my niche. It may, and one of the things too, if I do get, a client that's outside my niche, I've got a couple different options. I've got lots of connections that I can link them to if I really don't feel like it's a good fit for me. Or I can take it on, but just make sure they understand that it may take me a little bit longer to get up to speed on them because it is outside of my normal processes on things. So, and I think too, with me deciding on manufacturing because it tends to be a little bit more complicated, backing off to somebody that's in a service-based field actually is easier in the long run. To be able to help them out. I'm starting kind of more complicated and can help the easier side of things more so. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
you just sort of divulged the secret formula too, right? Of why niche. No, it's brilliant though. I love that you got there so quickly because, as I said, it was scary, but also because people don't realize that you will get other business. It's not like you have to turn it on. As you become more established and become known for your specialty, people will come from outside of that specialty also seek you out in your expertise. And again, then, like you said, you have that choice. You can connect them to somebody, you can take on the business. It's not that
Yeah.
you got everyone else out.
No, and even right now, I mean, I've got two clients that are manufacturers, but I've got one that is not actually a manufacturer, but they do deal with inventory. So it's not quite what I would envision as manufacturing necessarily, but they are on the adjacent side of things, and it makes it simpler to deal with. It was a good choice. It made it, like I said, it made it a lot easier to focus my marketing then
Yeah.
on that specific thing. When marketing tends to be kind of the thing that drives me the most bonkers about having my own business is, that's a piece of things that I don't enjoy, but it's a necessary evil, if you will. And so, being able to write as if I'm talking to one singular person, one type of person, simplifies things for me
Yeah.
from that aspect.
And that's what niching down is all about. People even tell you that, think of the name of the person you're talking to. It should be
Yep.
that or your ideal client. But you actually said something very interesting, which is I was about to ask you. In fact, you lead wonderfully into my next question, which is, I love your positioning of the caustic chaos controller. And then, I remember you paint a really vivid picture of the dreaded sort of 15th of the month scenario. So, so how did you come up with communicating because financial concepts in such a relatable and sort of human way? Because that actually is brilliant marketing, by the way. So I don't know why
Oh,
you.
well,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you. uh, that actually came about because I had found kind of relatively early on, a LinkedIn lead generation workshop, where they talk about how to set up your profile, making the switch from an employee to a business owner and making that switch in your LinkedIn. And she specifically focused on LinkedIn and updating your profiles and making your connections and how to how do you marketing? And so when I started to kind of lean away from the bookkeeping and kind of said, okay, if I'm not going to do bookkeeping, what do I want to do? One of the things that has always been a strong point for me has been the costing piece of things. And that is something that is relatively unique to manufacturers and inventory based businesses on how do you cost your inventory and how do you determine what your cost of goods sold is for parts. And so that was something that I remember a boss telling me many, many, many years ago of people either understand it or they don't. And he goes, I want you to learn this because he goes, I think you're going to understand it. And he was right. He goes, I not only understand it, you're going to love it. And he was absolutely right. And so that was a piece that even in my corporate career, um, that became kind of what I was known for is that I knew my costing. I understood how costing worked. And it is a concept that a lot of people really struggle to wrap their heads around on how to do that. And so, in the part of the niching program and part of the figuring out, how to market myself, I really kind of looked at that and said, you know what, I might as well embrace this. This is what I'm known for. This is, I've been, and if you were to talk to my previous bosses and stuff, that's what they hired me to do. I understand where the costs are coming from, how it flows through the system, all that kind of stuff. And then quite honestly, I use ChatGPT a little bit to help kind of figure out what's a catchy kind of catchy saying or catchy way of doing it. And it took probably 3 or 4 weeks and multiple conversations with ChatGPT over that time of saying, okay, here's kind of what I'm envisioning. Help me kind of set a profile for myself. Help me kind of create what should I do out here? What are the problems that clients are having that I want to work with, and what kind of skills do I have to offer?
What I love about it is also it's not just your background and your experience. You've also tied into a pain point that your client has, right? And then you
Yes,
paint
absolutely.
a picture of the 15th of the month scenario, which is sort of described a little bit of the chaos within these companies. So you really sort of bring that to life because I think one of the keys to marketing is being able to show your client that you have walked in their shoes. Right?
Mhm.
That's really important. So it's not about your experience or what you can do, but understanding that you know their world as intimately as they do, right? Which is what
Absolutely.
you did.
Yeah. And I mean, it's something that I've found a lot of the companies are struggling with is that, that they're not getting their reports and their things in a timely manner, and which again, has a couple different implications. And a lot of times they're looking for lending opportunities, and in order to get those lending opportunities, they need to be able to present their financials. And if they're not getting them in a timely manner, they can't get that funding.
Yeah, and clearly it has resonated with your clients, so it's working. Well,
It is.
now touch on one other thing, which is you seem to have a pretty full life outside of work with family, travel, hobbies that you talk about on your profile. So how do you prioritize and protect your personal time while managing the demands of running a solo business?
Well, first and foremost, my family and my faith come first. And that's, not only my husband and my kids, but also my parents, my brothers, my sister-in-law, nieces and nephews, all of that. I come from a pretty large family of extended family, and we've always been very, very close. So that was kind of just the way I grew up is family and faith are number one. And so that really kind of drives everything that I do. And I think a lot of it has been because I worked a schedule the way that I did for so many years and had to say no to things especially around my kids, that has really become I don't want my kids to ever think that I wasn't there around for them and wasn't there to support them. So that really kind of became the first thing as my first priority. But then it's also, in order to be the best for my family and be there for my family, I need to take care of myself mentally. So I need to make sure I give myself time away from work, even though I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
There are days you need to just be able to get up and get away from the computer. And, one of the best ways, and I haven't been able to implement this lately very well, but is going out for a walk at lunchtime, even if it's a 15 or 20-minute walk. And, at least a couple times a week, getting outside and just being able to be outside a little bit, away from my computer, away from any screens of technology. And I found that I am much happier. I am much better at my job when I do that. My kids and family are a lot happier, and it just it bleeds into everything. So really kind of trying to make that a little bit of a higher priority as well. And that means that I block out my calendar some days and say, nope, I'm going for a run, tomorrow afternoon. I'm blocking it off. It's going to be, if it's going to be nice outside, I'm going to block off some time and make sure that I get outside and go do some stuff all the time.
That's great. And that's great advice too, because it sounds like your family and faith keep you grounded. You draw boundaries with your clients, which is critical as a solopreneur. And
It
then I
is.
love that you sort of make your calendar work for you rather than become a slave to your calendar, right? So I love that you
Yeah.
sin for taking breaks or going for a run or whatever that is not
Yeah.
tethered to your desk. I think that's great. So that leads actually nicely to my next question, which is if you could offer one piece of advice to someone wanting to start their solopreneur journey, what would you say to them?
Just start. Always just start. I mean, and that's a lot of people, you talk to, if you see a lot of the leaders in the small business world, they'll tell you, that's kind of a common piece of advice, but it's true. The scariest part is the first step forward.
Yeah.
And as long as you keep moving forward, that's a thing around my house. You keep moving forward at all times. There's no point necessarily wishing what happened, because you wouldn't be where you are today without all of the choices you made in the past, whether they were good or bad. It makes you who you are today, right? So it's just kind of just start. You just put that first foot forward, and then find somebody that, like I said, find somebody that's doing what you do or what you want to do. And that's something too you need, even during the journey of being a solopreneur, is looking ahead of what do I want my life to look like in next year? What do I want it to look like 10 years from now? It'll be a different situation. My kid right now, I've got one that is a sixth grader and one that's a preschooler. So they'll both be in school next year. That means, we won't have daycare. So then I can back off a little bit, but from actual client work and needing the income to come in. But it also will then give me some time to volunteer at school with them a little bit more and be more involved with both of them. And then I can start taking on things like I want to be more active in my community. And, looking at things and going, okay, I want, one of the goals that I have with my business is I want to be able to donate to some of our local, like our 5K runs and stuff like that. And so I know that I need to get to a point revenue wise where that can be a part of my regular expense, if you will. This can be a really lonely journey sometimes, being a solopreneur. And so trying to find groups, especially when you go from working in a corporate environment where you're surrounded by people all day, every day, to being working from my home where my home is empty except for me all day long. So this kind of interaction is like the only interaction I get a lot of times in a day. And so being a part of some of those groups that you can find that are some of it is ideal client based and, groups that where your ideal client is, but it's also equally important to be in groups that are with people that do what you do. And you can talk through issues that people that have never run their own business or have no desire to really don't understand some of the struggles that you can go through. Whether that's the revenue not coming in consistently and you're riding the ups and downs of that, finding new clients, where do you go? And just sometimes it's, how do you deal with a client situation that you've never dealt with before? And it might be causing you tons of stress. As long, if you're part of some of those groups, you can run it by people and get other people's opinions on it too. So, finding the like people, finding mentors, and really just finding the courage. And it all it takes is one day of courage to make that step. and then it gets easier, or better, maybe. I'm not sure if it gets easier, but it gets better, and you're not quite, it's a muscle. You have to stretch your muscle, and once you're used to kind of making those steps, it's not quite as scary anymore.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I just want to say we didn't rehearse any plug for Boost Solo. We just
No,
did a brilliant plug for why I launched Boost Solo. It was really for
yes,
that, as you said beautifully, that unless you're on this journey, you don't understand this journey. You can have a lot of people who will love you, are around you, but the ones who is going through this are the ones who you need to have. So I always say, find your tribe. And that's one of the reasons why I want to build this community so we can all share and
for
support each
sure,
other and also advise and help each other because like
absolutely.
inevitably somebody's done face the problem you're facing. Yeah, so
Yep. Or at least similar enough that,
yeah, exactly.
what they've gone through, you can take bits and pieces and, you know, go with your gut. Just, I mean, trust yourself is another kind of thing. You need to have that confidence to try to just trust that you do have gifts that other people need to see and that they can use. Another thing that I had seen too was that somebody had said at one point early on in when I was looking at, starting a business, it was, you can put stuff out on the internet, and unless you actually do the work, people aren't going to see it. So you can screw up as much as you want to at the beginning because people aren't looking for you yet. And so the internet's a big wide world of things. So, if you put, at least just get started. Start typing things up. You'll get better with practice, and you'll find out a lot about yourself in that journey,
True. And
more
that's
than
great.
you ever probably imagined.
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah,
absolutely right, and it's a great way to end. And I love to end with a little rapid fire round, so I'm just going to sort of throw a couple of questions at you and just tell us what comes to mind. So
go for it.
if you could have a fictional character as your business mentor, who would it be and why?
I don't know about a fictional character. If I could have any mentor, though, it would probably be somebody like or not Michael Eisner. Currently Disney, Mike or Bob Iger
Bob
right now
Iger.
for Disney.
Okay.
Um, he's he's not fictional, obviously, but just kind of we're big Disney fans at our house, and just the transformation that Disney has gone through from the early, well, even from the beginning, but even more recently, even the early '90s to today, it's been quite interesting to see and to watch the ups and downs that they've had. Um, and kind of, I'd love to be able to kind of sit down and just pick his brain a little bit and see kind of things that he would recommend, even though it's a lot different working for a big corporation like that. Um, but yeah, just kind of, I don't know if I have a fictional character necessarily.
That's
As
fine.
much, but
Go with Bob Iger. And actually, you've sort of, this is, you're going to laugh now, but my second question, and I'm not making this up, if your business was a Disney World ride, what would it be?
if it was a Disney World ride, Expedition Everest, um, is kind of the first thing that comes to mind, which is kind of funny, but only because it's a little bit, it's the business is a climb right at the beginning, and you're kind of climbing, and all of a sudden you go over the hill, and you're just like, oh my gosh, but you're having fun on it while you're going on it. And then you hit to the point where the ride goes back, you stop for a little bit. And so a business world is, you're moving along, and all of a sudden you do have points where it just kind of stops and things kind of just chill. And then all of a sudden you're going backwards. And so like, things are just kind of, you're like, oh my gosh, what do we do now? And then things reverse back again. And it's, kind of, it's a whole ride. It definitely is a whole ride on that and all that kind of different things. So um, that would probably be the closest ride right now that I can think of
You can see that.
to
I
my
can
business.
see that. What's the most unusual place you've ever worked on a client's accounts?
Unusual place, Disney World. It sounds
That's
awful, but
great.
it is.
So, if your entrepreneurial journey was a board game, what would it be called?
Boggle,
Oracle.
boggle, because couple ways to look at it. You shake it up and you have to figure out what to do with it, right? So the entrepreneurship journey is you get shaken up at the beginning and then you're kind of sitting there trying to figure out what you can do. And here's the pieces in front of you. And it kind of works too for my clients too. Of you get a new client, you're looking in at them and you're trying to figure out how you can make sense out of what you're seeing on there. And you're trying to get the most points out of it that you can with what you've got and what you've gotten in front of you. So, but it's, and then you kind of need to shake things up again every now and then and kind of reset and see what else you can do with things. So it sounds weird, but that's probably about as
Well,
good as I can think of as
it's
far as
great.
the
And I
journey
don't know
there.
why you say bad marketing. You answered it too. So what's the most unexpected way your Lego building skills have helped in business?
Lego has a foundation and it builds. You build off of your foundation. Your next step builds on that step before. So, um, the nice thing about Lego is you have an instruction manual most of the time, unless you are building with straight, without an actual kit. But it's really the building the foundation and the importance of the foundation steps and building on what you've built before. Um, and understanding that piece of things. And sometimes you're looking at a Lego instruction book and you're looking at your Lego pieces that you have, you can't always tell, like the colors are very similar in some cases and it's hard to tell in the book. And that's kind of, that can be um learning to really kind of pay attention to those details on things too. Those details can make a difference on what you're doing. So both the foundation building and the paying attention to the specific details of it kind of really help describe what it's been like and what that means for my clients and
Yeah,
how to build that.
great answer. And again, I can visualize that. So awesome. That's a fun way to end. So thank you so much, Shalena, for your time and for being, so open and honest and like giving us so much
Absolutely.
wisdom and advice. Really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.